Andrew Paul and Jennifer Clark joining me right now. A day after the verdict, the guilty verdict with Markus Kaarma. Obviously, there was a lot of emotion expressed in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Jennifer and Andrew, can you tell me what was going through your mind as the clerk was reading the verdict?
Just hoping that it was a good outcome for the family.
How about you, Andrew?
On the edge of our seats, just like everybody else was, Peter.
You know, I noted that when Mr. Kaarma came in the room, he was already crying, and he, I guess, wept all the way through the reading and up until the time he was let out, and it didn't look like he said very much at all. Did that strike you at all, or were you paying attention to that at all?
I wasn't looking at him.
I was paying attention to the clerk.
Sure.
Reading the verdict.
I understand. Now, a couple of things I wanted to ask you about, because folks have asked me, and I promised I would pass the questions along to you. The first question is, why was the charge deliberate homicide and deliberate homicide only, and not any lesser included offenses such as mitigated deliberate homicide or manslaughter in this case?
Well, we felt like the evidence supported a deliberate homicide charge. To say that it was mitigated or negligent would have not done service to the facts. Okay. The fact was he was shot twice. He was shot from behind the first time, and then the defendant shot two more times, adjusted his stance, had to adjust his aim, and then shot him right in the face. That's deliberate homicide.
Okay. Now, another thing I wanted to ask you about, as the trial went on, and of course I noted that the state spent a great deal of time interviewing or questioning Janelle Pflager, and as the testimony grew on, it just seemed to a lot of folks that this woman could have been partially responsible for what happened. From what I understand, she left the garage door open, she put the purse in there, she encouraged Kaarma to go once Mr. Day entered the garage. Is that something that you could go back and charge her for, or did she commit any crimes by doing those things?
In her statements, a lot of times she would say, I couldn't believe that he pulled the trigger. I can't believe he actually shot someone. She wanted to use a baseball bat. She told him, let's be reasonable, let's use a baseball bat and let's just catch him, and so that the cops can get him. She was pretty consistent with that story, and she's not one who's known to be consistent. And so, it would be really hard for us to charge her with accountability for homicide. I think we just would not have the proof to do it.
Okay. Now, I also I interviewed Mr. Ryan yesterday, lead attorney for Mr. Kaarma, and he indicated that there would be at least an appeal of the change of venue or the lack of consideration of a change of venue. Does that affect you folks at all, or do you just have to wait for the state Supreme Court to make a decision one way or another?
Yeah, all of our appeals are handled by the Attorney General's office, so we won't be involved in the appeals process except to, if they have any questions, need any information. But as far as the change of venue, I think we had sent out a questionnaire early on to the potential jurors that helped select and narrow down that jury pool a lot. It was one of the first jury trials I've ever been in where very few people were we went through those questionnaires, and a lot of people were agreed upon by both the defense and the state to excuse. So when we got down to the actual pool that came in, we had a very impartial pool to select from.
I also noted that there was, of course, a great deal of media coverage during the jury selection and also during the trial itself, and that the jury was not sequestered after each day, and so they were free to go home and read the newspaper, look at television, listen to radio. Did that might that mitigate the fact that they may have been influenced perhaps during the trial, or were they told by the judge to not listen to the media?
They were ordered by the judge not to read anything, not to follow any media, and in my experience, jurors take their jobs very seriously and abide by those rules. We learned through jury selection because the letter that was sent with the questionnaires to the potential jurors also instructed them from that point forward not to read anything about the case, and we learned through jury selection that they did indeed abide by that order and not follow up on anything.
I noted that both of you were quite, it seemed quite close to the Dede family. What contact did you have with them aside from your job as being a prosecutor? I know that there were several hugs from you, Jen, with both of them. Did you have a chance to get close to them, and what kind of folks are they? I never had a chance to meet them.
Well, we did. We met Darren's dad in April when he came over. Spent some time with them, or with him at that time. We had a phone call with them, until we got to trial, and then really got to meet both of them when this trial started. I don't know how close we became with them, except for the fact that we all shared a common desire for the outcome of this case.
Now, I wasn't able to attend the hearing this morning, and the audio that we got, of course, was able to pick up all the Turkish, but unfortunately none of the English translations. If one or both of you could just kind of share a little bit, just from your own recollection, the thoughts of Mr. and Mrs. Dede regarding sentencing, if you could kind of share just the gist of what they had to say.
Well, the father expressed thanks and gratitude to the people of Missoula. He was kind of overwhelmed by the show of support for them, and he talked about his son and about how beloved he was, and that he was raised well, and that he didn't learn this type of behavior in Germany, but this was something he learned from his friends in the United States. But he was very appreciative, I think, of Missoulians and Montanans, and he kind of explained that he realizes now that that Kaarma was kind of an anomaly and he did not represent Missoulians or Montanans when he committed this crime.
Jen, how about Mrs. Dede?
She expressed the loss to her and to the family, explained that part of her heart is missing now that her son is gone, how hard it is for his sisters since his death.
And I understand she became quite emotional on the stand.
Did. And she's been quite emotional through the process. I think one of the hardest times for us was a phone call that we had with the family where we shared some of the investigation with them, and she had the same or a similar response, and it was just heart-wrenching.
Well, one can certainly understand why. So what happens next? I understand that have you had a chance to fix the sentencing date, and what part will you folks play in that?
So the date has been set for February 12th. Right now, between now and then, a probation officer will conduct a pre-sentence investigation and will write a report to give to the judge that will basically go through his history, his criminal history, psychological history, family history, financial history, everything, and give that to the judge and make a recommendation for sentencing. At the sentencing hearing, we will be responsible for making a recommendation for sentencing from the state.
Have you had a chance to think about that at all, or is it too soon to say?